Hello and welcome to the Dream Team Professor podcast. My name is Scott, and in this episode, we're going to be looking at initial fixture planning and transfer strategy for the Sun Dream Team Euro 2024 fantasy football game. If you're completely new to the game, you might want to check out my how to play guide, which will be in the link in the description below. But if not, let's just get straight into it. So I'm going to start off with a quick reminder of how the transfers and match days work on the Sun Dream Team Euros game. So the tournament is split into 7 match days, which you can think of as game weeks. Match day 1, 2, and 3 are the group stages. Match day 1, every team plays their first fixture in the groups. Match day 2, every team plays their second match. Match day 3, every team plays their third match. So I've made a very basic fixture ticker. It's not scientific at all. It's literally just my own thoughts on these games. But as you can see, match day 1 comprises of absolutely everyone's first fixture. The same for match day 2, and then the same for match day 3. So we'll have unlimited transfers to use basically from now until 1 hour before the first kickoff of match day 1, which is that Germany-Scotland match. So we'll have unlimited transfers to prepare our team ahead of match day 1. After that deadline passes, we'll then get free transfers to prepare our teams for match day 2. Once the match day 2 deadline passes, you'll have another free transfers to prepare your team for match day 3. So once the deadline passes, you can tinker with your team, use your transfers, undo things. But when it gets to that deadline, your transfers lock in, and then every team plays their round of fixtures. There's no transfers taking place in between the match day. We'll then be given unlimited transfers to set our teams up for the round of 16 knockout stage, which is called match day 4. You can think of this as a mini wildcard. But it's not that important to fill our teams with players that we think are going to progress to the next stages of the knockouts, as we would have done before in some of the previous international dream teams. Before, you would have planned your team out with teams that you think will progress to the knockouts in order to save transfers. But it doesn't really matter for this game mode, because you will basically get a mini wild card ahead of the knockout stages. So you're probably going to end up with the teams that you think are going to progress anyway, because you're going to think they're the best teams and the best performing teams. But you don't have to prepare your team with players you think are going to make it straight to the next round. After we use that wildcard ahead of match day 4, or the unlimited transfers ahead of match day 4, we'll then follow a similar pattern, but instead of having 3 transfers between each round, it's then up to 5 transfers between each round. But in this episode, we're only going to look at initial planning. So we're going to start off by just looking at match day 1, match day 2, and match day 3, which are the group stages. If you have any questions regarding the transfers, if it's your first time playing, or if you just haven't quite got to grips with it, feel free to drop a comment and I can explain in the comments below. Now that part's cleared up, let's look at how we can start planning our teams, planning our first drafts. I'm not going to mention any specific players to target in this episode. It is just going to be using the sort of fixture ticker and planning to sort of get our first drafts in order, because this is the way that I'm just going to start planning my own team, rather than just picking players that I want. I want to try and pick players based on who I think have the best games and the best fixtures. So the way I see it, and it's not the way of playing, it might not be the best way of playing, but this is the way that I'm going to approach it. I'm thinking is that with just 3 transfers to use between each match day, I want to sort of mix my team up, or have a core of players in my team that I'm happy to hold from match day 1 to match day 3. Because we can only make 3 transfers in between each round, there's bound to be something that happens: injuries, suspensions, red cards, all that sort of stuff. It always seems to happen. So 3 transfers may not seem as many as we'd like. We obviously don't see the lineups as well, so there could be a few surprises with lineups. People we thought might start don't end up starting, and you may have to use extra transfers there. So ideally, I want to try and make a core of players that I think are nailed, but I'm also happy to hold from match day 1 to match day 3. And that way I can sort of use the free transfers to be a bit more proactive in targeting certain players rather than sort of reacting to things that have happened in my team. Some things you can't help, but that's the way I'm starting to look at it. So the fixture ticker, again, on the screen, I just put this together really quickly. I've seen some fixture tickers out there with loads of different colors, loads of different organizations, but I've literally done this sort of easy, medium, and hard, real basic. But what I've sort of seen from looking at it is there's a few teams that I think would be decent to hold from match day 1 to match day 3. So I'm going to start off with the hosts, Germany, Scotland, Hungary, and Switzerland. They obviously can be tough games. I'm not downplaying them by making them green fixtures, but I think Germany should have enough to see these as being pretty favourable fixtures. So I quite like the look of Germany. And if I was to bring in a German player, as long as they end up playing, I think I'd be happy to hold them through match day 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to put Germany there on my list of teams I think could be possible holds from 1 to 3. Then I'm going to come down to England. So England face Serbia, Denmark, and Slovenia. I think we all agree that England would be expected to win at least 2 of those, or try and win all 3 of those fixtures. And if I went for a Harry Kane, for example, who's going to be really popular, I would be looking to keep Kane against Serbia, Denmark, and Slovenia. So I'll add England to the list. Then we've got France. Austria looks a decent fixture. Netherlands is a hard fixture, I'd say, or medium fixture. But I wouldn't see it as being one where I'd want to take out a French player if I had them. And then Poland, I think that's a pretty reasonable fixture as well for France. So I'm going to chuck them on the list of teams that I'd be happy to hold for the 3 game weeks or match days. And then Belgium as well. So they're looking pretty good. They've got a decent group. Slovakia, Romania, and Ukraine. So I've made all of these green. I think these look like good fixtures. If I was to go for a Lukaku, for example, or one of the good midfielders, defenders, I think they look like decent fixtures throughout. So I'd add them to my list of core players. And then Portugal, they have Czech Republic or Czechia, Turkey, and Georgia. So I think that looks like a really good group down in Group F for Portugal. Again, maybe a Ronaldo, a Cancelo, a Bruno Fernandes. They would be someone that you'd pretty much look to hold from match day 1 to match day 3. There could be an exception, maybe if they win their first 2 fixtures. You might be a little bit wary that maybe they'll rotate in match day 3. But overall, I think they look like 3 decent fixtures. The reason I'm sort of saying this is because I'm going to show you, I'll share my screen with you and show you like a sort of mock draft of how I'll use this. But I'm thinking that if I have a core of these players and leave them there, I can then choose from some of these teams who have a bit of a mixed bag. They're definitely players that you want to have in your team, but you might not want to have them for every match day. I see them as maybe being a bit of a flexible slot. So I've called them hop on, hop off points, and you'll kind of see why. So Spain, obviously a really good team, really good squad, and players that we will want to pick. But they've got a bit of a tougher group. So Croatia, the first game, I've called it a medium fixture. Croatia always do pretty good in tournaments. And so I've made them a yellow fixture, but it is one where I'd potentially want Spain players. Italy in match day 2, though, that does look like a tough one. If you had like a Spain defender, for example, I wouldn't be that confident of a clean sheet. And their defense could be pretty good as well. So not as good as, say, I don't know, a Portugal versus Turkey. So I've said, and then they follow that up with a match against Albania in match day 3, which would be one that you definitely wanted to target as long as you wasn't expecting too much rotation. So I've said Spain look good for match day 1, probably not match day 2, but then they look good for match day 3. So you might see that as being one of your hop on, hop off points. So, for example, you may want a Spain attacker, Morata, just for example. You may want him for Croatia. You may not be so confident about the Italy match, and you might want to go for a more premium striker. And then you definitely would want a Spain attacker for Albania. So that's why I'm just calling it a hop on, hop off point. Croatia, for example, you may only want for match day 2. That good fixture against Albania is sort of sandwiched between a tough game against Spain and a tough game against Italy. So it could be handy to keep a flexible spot and then maybe hop onto a certain player. One example I've got is if you, for maybe you see on the first game that Albania end up being sort of the whipping boys of the group. No disrespect to Albania, but if Italy end up battering Albania, you may then want to move on. If you had an Italy player to start with, brilliant. But then you may think, you know what, I'm going to want a Modric for Albania as well. So you could move that Italy player to a Modric, and then you could move Modric onto your Spain midfielder, for example. So you could use that as like a flexible slot. So that's why I've highlighted these teams here as a hop on, hop off. And like I just mentioned, Italy, Albania, Spain, Croatia. So you might want them for the first one, but not the second two. Netherlands are the same. So decent team, lots of really good options. Match day 1, I think looks pretty good for Netherlands. So Poland. But say you went with Virgil van Dijk in defence. You think Poland looks like a good fixture. You may not want him against France in match day 2, up against Mbappe, for example. But then you might want him back for Austria. So you might want to use one of your slots for this, moving your Netherlands player on and off. It's not a guaranteed system, but this is kind of what I'm thinking. If I could fill my team with maybe a bulk of positions that I hold, and then maybe 3-4 positions that I see as flexible, I could use them to make these moves here. Czech Republic, I've highlighted them. So match day 2, they face Georgia, which could end up being a decent fixture, but then they have Portugal in the first one, so you won't want them for that. Ukraine, match day 1 and match day 2 look quite appealing to me. Romania, Slovakia, but then they finish up with Belgium. I was quite liking the idea of maybe Ukrainian defenders, a little bit cheaper. Romania looks like a decent one. Slovakia, but then would I want them up against Lukaku, for example, if I've got Lukaku in my team? Probably not. So I could mark that as being a move off point for Ukraine. So this is just my initial thoughts. I've got my list of core teams that I might want players from, and then maybe Spain, Croatia, Italy, Netherlands. I use these sort of 3-4 slots to sort of move between players. So here's a rough look at what I mean when putting together a draft. So, for example, I said Germany, England, France, Belgium, and Portugal were teams that I quite liked the look of. So when I'm sort of planning my team, you can go to countries and then maybe highlight them. So Belgium were there, England, France, Germany, and Portugal. So I can then be picking from these individual teams. Kane, Mbappe, both fit the bill. You might want Ronaldo or Lukaku. They're going to be a popular front three. Bruno Fernandes, chuck him in there. We might want a Germany player. So Musiala. I won't pay too much attention to this draft. This is not going to be my team. Who else can we go for? A midfielder from, say, France. So we could chuck Dembele in the mix. And another English player. I won't be choosing him, but Jack Grealish, just for the example. So all from the core teams that we highlighted. Defense, it will be a bit tougher because we're using a big chunk of the budget here. So you might want a few cheaper players thrown in there. Go on, I'll make it Declan Rice just for the example. He's a bit cheaper. Then defense, who have we got from Belgium? Chuck Face in there. And what have we got left? 8.5 million. So, do you know what? We're going to chuck a cheap keeper in there, not from these teams. So I'll quickly just reset that. We'll just go for anyone at the cheapest price for now, just for the example. Strakosha. Again, won't be choosing him, but just for the example. And then we want to carry on choosing from our clubs that we like. So Germany, we'll chuck a defender in from there. And then 3.5 left. Who can we afford from these teams? I'll just put Pavard in for the sake of the example again. So what I was explaining really is that, you could choose a sort of dummy team picking from these main clubs. Obviously, the examples I've used are not the best. I'm just trying to show you the example. But then you may have a few slots that you might want to use as your hop on, hop off point. So Spain, Croatia, Italy, Netherlands, Czech Republic, Turkey, Ukraine are some of the ones that have sort of jumped out to me. So we'll get rid of Declan Rice here. And, we might decide that we like the look of Italy's first fixture. So we might want Barella in there from Italy. 4 million. I'll just have to remove another slot. So we get Barella in because we like his first fixture. He could be one of the slots where we target Albania for the first one. But then we might want to move him on for that second fixture because he goes up against Spain, and we might think that Spain fixture is quite tough. But Croatia happened to play Albania in the second fixture, so we may use that slot to move Barella onto Modric, also 4 million. And then, like I said, if Albania seem to be that, like they're a team that are decent to target, we can move that slot later on onto Rodri from Spain. So we could have that as maybe one of our flexible slots. And you could do a similar thing with Ukraine, for example. Zabani, 2.5. If you look at the fixture ticker, he's got Romania and Slovakia. So you might want him for the first two, hold him there, swap him for someone who's got a better third fixture. Maybe Netherlands. Netherlands face Austria in that third fixture, so you can move it on there. The idea being is that you could have your main guys that you hold, Kane, Mbappe, Lukaku. They're fine to keep. Bruno, you're going to keep him for all three fixtures: Czech Republic, Turkey, Georgia. Musiala, or whoever you decide on from Germany, Scotland, Hungary, Switzerland, all look pretty good. Dembele, Austria, Netherlands, Poland, all look like decent fixtures. So you can have a couple slots and you're not worried that you're going to be too sort of over-indexed in teams that you might not want to hold. Because what could happen is initially you might say, I like Netherlands up against Poland. So we might want to change Dembele to someone from the Netherlands. Xavi Simons. We might like the look of Italy, like I said. And then we don't start with Musiala. We start with Barella. And France. France would probably be a good example to keep actually with Dembele, but we'll leave it at that. But basically, if this happens, you start like this. You've got one Spain, one Italy, and one Holland in your team for the first game. The second game comes around and Barella ends up playing against Spain. So you might want to take him out. Simons for Netherlands goes on and plays France. So you might think, do you know what? I think France kept a clean sheet in their first match. I don't really fancy him. You take him out. And then Rodri ends up playing against Italy. Maybe Italy scored a few goals. And you're not feeling so confident, or they kept a clean sheet, you're not feeling so confident, you might want to take Rodri out. That is your free transfers used. And you could have an injury come up, something like that. Maybe your lineup wasn't as expected. Maybe About Face doesn't end up starting, and you may want to remove him from your team, but you've only got free transfers. So this is kind of the reason why I was liking the idea of just going for a core from Germany, England, France, Belgium, and then maybe just having a little sprinkling of the teams that you can sort of hop on, hop off of. I hope that sort of example has made some sense. Those flexible spots might not just be for sort of hopping on and off of teams like Spain, Croatia, Italy. You might also decide that some of your core teams do really, really well to start off with, and have nicer fixtures coming up, that you may want to sort of double or triple up on certain teams as well, but maybe not for the whole duration of the group game. So, for example, match day 2, we've got Belgium versus Romania. So say Romania have a bad start to the tournament in that first match against Ukraine. And then maybe Belgium start off really well. Lukaku gets a couple of goals. Midfielders getting a few attacking returns. You may also decide that, I mean, everyone might have Lukaku. You may want De Bruyne as well for that fixture. So you might want to keep a spot in midfield that's flexible. So you could add an additional Belgium midfielder, maybe a Doku, maybe a Trossard does well. So you could also use it to double up or triple up on certain teams. Match day 3, Portugal versus Georgia stands out as being a really good one. You might want to have Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes for this one, or you may want to add a Cancelo, for example. Not just adding teams from the previous list, you might still want to double up on some of those core teams. So that could be something as well. Match day 3, Spain versus Albania stands out as being a good match day 3 fixture. So you might just want to add even more of the teams that you think are the stronger core teams that you want to start with. Captaincy and boosters. I think this is something that we need to consider as well when we're building like our first draft. It might be worth having an idea of who you want your free captains to be for the group stages. So you only get one captain per match day. So from match day 1, you may want to look through this list, and we're just going to go for someone that's got a green fixture that I've pointed out. But let's just say Belgium versus Slovakia. You might decide that you think Lukaku is the best captain for that week. So you're probably going to start off with Lukaku in your team. Match day 2, you might decide who's got the best fixture here. Denmark, Harry Kane. So you could go for Lukaku and Harry Kane from the start, and that's going to save you a transfer for match day 2. Because if match day 2 you start with Kane, Mbappe, and Lukaku, for example, you may have the best free captains there, and you're fine, you're set. You can use your free transfers each match day to target other players, outfield players, defenders that may not be your captain picks. If you don't start with the players you want for captaincy, and that could maybe be, let's say match day 3, you think that Ronaldo is the best captain against Georgia. If I start with Kane, Mbappe, Lukaku, I know that in match day 3, I'm going to need to keep a transfer behind to get Ronaldo into my team. If you don't build your team with the captains already in, that's going to cost you transfers down the line. It doesn't mean it's definitely the way you have to do it, but just account for it when you are planning your transfers in. Boosters, you may want to consider this as well. We're going to do a separate quick video on maybe how to use the boosters, but if you're using your 12th man, that is going to save you a transfer for that week. So maybe I don't want to transfer in or don't want to captain Ronaldo for that Georgia game, but I definitely want him. But I also definitely want Kane, Mbappe, Lukaku. I could save one of my free transfers for that final game week by 12th man in Ronaldo in for the Georgia game. So if I'm sort of planning out my transfers in advance, I know it never goes to plan, but it's good to have an idea. You may think that I don't need to worry about using an extra transfer on Ronaldo. I could just 12 man him in. If you're planning max captain, maybe you can have a look at this fixture ticker and decide there's a certain week where I want to have all of the big hitters in. There's a match day that has all of the best fixtures that I like the look of. That might be the one where you want to use your max captain. Or similar for goal bonus. Goal bonus, you may want to load up on attackers, and you may want to account for that with your transfers. You may decide that you want to use your goal bonus in the first game week. Well, probably best to start with some budget defenders for the first week. If you decide that you're going to use it later on in the knockout stages, then maybe you can put a bit more budget into your defense. Because if you start off with a really expensive defense in the first game week, and then you decide in game week 2 that you want to use your goal bonus, you're going to end up having to use sort of free transfers, downgrading your defense, and then it's going to be much harder to obviously get the attackers in. So you probably want to plan for that. Maybe have an idea in mind if you are going to use these boosters in the first 3 match days. Maybe you want to start putting a little plan together and approaching that with your first draft. I hope you found that useful. If you have, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. We're going to have plenty of other videos coming out on the Dream Team Euro 2024 game. But I just want to get started really with sort of transfer planning, the fixture grid, and sort of just to touch on a reminder of how to use the transfers on the new game. I didn't think that it's that helpful really just to start and just chuck out here's my first draft, for example. I want to do this video with sort of my thinking on how I'm going to approach putting together a draft. Coming up, I'm going to have some team previews, looking at sort of defenders, midfielders, attackers, and a little preview on each group with set piece takers and stuff like that. But we're just getting started. Probably won't have any sort of team drafts coming out till much nearer the deadline. To start off with, just wanted to do a bit of planning, and we're going to go start doing a look into some of the players that we'll want to target for the rest of the tournament. Now that we're starting to get the rest of the squads coming out, and we've still got friendlies to come as well. So no rush. We will have extra videos coming out in the next couple of weeks. So if you've enjoyed it, please do leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and also do follow the Dream Team Tonic podcast. We've been doing our usual Dream Team content throughout the season, and we'll be doing our first Euros episode this upcoming weekend. So do give a follow to the Dream Team Tonic podcast as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.